let's explain methods. Methods are how we actually create or perform actions within our classes, how we initiate progress, how we initiate the flow of something else within our classes. We put our blocks of code within our constructors or methods. Constructors are very much like methods, except their names are the same name as the class. If you don't have the same name of the class, then you're actually working with a method. So a method is something we can use within our programs. We're still looking at the class members project within classes. Let's find a method. I've extended what we've been working on so far. We have print number, and then we have the second print number. Well, you might be saying to yourself, wait a second. You can't do that. When I look at this, it looks confusing to me. Well, it's confusing to us, and it makes things more complicated, but it's very clear to the computer. It's very clear to the compiler. The compiler's going, all right, because it doesn't see anything like we see it. It sees it like the matrix. You know, when you're in a matrix and you're looking at all those numbers, well, that's what a computer's doing. So it's saying, well, these numbers here mean print number, and it doesn't have any parameters, and these numbers here mean print number differently, but they have parameters, so it's different. So if you don't put parameters here and you have those as the same thing, then you get a problem, because it's the same thing. It's referencing the same thing similarly, except for the fact that this is void and this is bool. So let's take this out of there. We'll actually duplicate this, and I'll explain all this in great detail. We'll do it like this, and now we'll compile this. The same parameter types. It's already defined. Well, that says something to us. Well, this here, this means that we're not returning anything. Void means void. Don't return anything. Not returnable. Your warranty's void. Can't do it. Void. So if you're not returning anything to the actual person or class that's referencing your class, then you specify void there. No big deal. Might look strange, but that's what it means. I'll explain the whole thing. Now, bool is going to return something. It's going to return a boolean, and we're going to have to check for it. All right, so that is the signature of our class here. That's the signature. Classes have signatures, but when you have different parameter lists, doesn't matter if you're returning something or not, the parameter list is going to dictate what is going to be allowed with your names here or your types of methods, because we want to create separate things here. And this is going to be discussed a little bit later in the overloading, because that's what we're doing. Overloading it. We're overloading that particular name of a method or constructor or what have you. All right, so these will work, but we're still passing something and not returning something or returning something. And here we're not passing anything. So this is going to work. We can debug this, no problems. There we go. We have some output. We'll see what that does. So this is a signature. So when you have a signature based on the return type, public or private or what have you, the name of the method, and then your parameter list, you have to follow the parameter list. You have to follow it just like you would follow anything else within your program. This is a signature for your method. If you don't pass in 2 parameters, well, you're going to get a problem. You get an error. If you try to pass in a boolean or something else that's not going to fit or allowed to be implicitly converted, then you're going to get a problem. If you try to pass a string in to a boolean, you're going to have a problem. If you specify a return value, but then you don't return something, that's not going to compile, because once you do this, you have to return a value in your method. That's the signature. So all we do is, if we have something that's not void here, we have to return something here. And we have to return a boolean type. Here we're just inversing this value that's passed as a parameter, and we're returning it the opposite of what was sent to it, because these are sent from whoever's calling that method on that class. All right, that's a lot of information, but hopefully it's making sense, because this is exactly the stuff you need to know how to do really effectively in order to do anything constructive within C#. So let's just continue. So when we continue, we're just writing a console.writeLine. We have our Q here, which is just here. We're just passing this in there, and this has to be set differently. No, this is right. B. QB. Here's where we have our variables here. These are the variables that fill up these zeros and ones, and this is going to get written to the output here. On the second one, we're just going to say, okay, I printed a number, and it's going to print I, because I internally is what gets printed, not what we send here. But if you wanted to change that and make it this number is what we change, or this number is what we print, then you change it from Q. From this one is I. This is the internal I. This is the Q. So we want to actually specify a number here. Here we're using the default number, so we just want to print it. Nothing is passed. So we have nothing to work with in here. We could define whatever we want in here, but we can't work with anything from the user or whoever started up that class because nothing is going to be grabbed here, unless you use properties. Now if you use properties, then you could set that first and then call the print number method, something like that. So this is what it does. So let's see what happens at the bottom here, as you can see. And again, we'll go over the access method, but if you have this set as private, then you don't see it there. You can't see it. It's not going to show up. Public is going to show up, and that's going to be what you can use. This is a custom constructor that's public. This is public, and both of these are public actually, all three. And so they're accessible from within another class within our program. So down at the bottom, all we do is call this c2.printNumber. We'll pass in that c1x property. We'll pass in false, and then you don't have to do anything here. It does return a Boolean, but you don't have to worry about it. Here we're going to use the Boolean, and we're going to pass this here, no problem. Pass it within our console.writeLine. Here we're using the Boolean. We could do something like this and pass that, but this is how we're going to do it. And then we run it. There you go. It does it twice because we called it twice. The second time we called it again, just like it had happened or it had never happened. And then the value is true. This is what that console write line does. Value is true. And that is returned. We passed in false, the opposite of what we passed in, true. And the number is 90, just like we specified.